Don't we all just love Disney? Is there anything in the world more synonymous with childhood? Disney has been around almost since the dawn of cinema and has enchanted generations of children ever since. Until it became a money-grubbing corporate giant that everyone accused of brainwashing a generation, that is. Of course, it's pretty easy to figure out the cons of Disney. A good chunk of what they've done since the year 2000 is a con. But let's forget about all that and harken back to the golden age, Disney's timeless animated classics. In fact, there are so many truly great ones that I just couldn't keep this to a top 10. So like my favourite video games, I'm making this a top 20 list. I won't get into the direct-to-video sequels or Disney's collaborations with Pixar or anything. I'm only going by what Disney considers their official lineup of animated motion pictures. To date, there are 61 of them, with Strange World being the most recent. So get ready, these are my top 20 favourite Disney animated features. Number 20, Alice in Wonderland. This one really stands out to me as unique in the Disney oeuvre. It's a dark, twisted psychological journey in which a very logical girl is thrown into a world that's the complete opposite of logic. In terms of overall structure, it's more or less a road trip movie. You see something, you have a brief encounter with it, and then you move on. I haven't yet read either of the original Lewis Carroll books, but I've heard this movie tries to combine the two into one, and in that respect, I think it really works. It's a solid, self-contained piece. Number 19, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. It's the stories of The Wind in the Willows and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow told back to back. Again, I haven't yet read either of the original books, but each of these adaptations is intelligent and engaging in its own right. But by far my favourite part is the built-up appearance of the Headless Horseman at the end of Sleepy Hollow. That scene perfectly nails the sense of nervous tension, and the horseman himself has an amazing design. Each of the two vignettes has also been released separately, but here, together in their original format, they make for an excellent package. Number 18, The Little Mermaid. This movie basically rescued Disney from their dark age, ushering in what's commonly called the Disney Renaissance. I didn't grow up with this one, but there's still more than enough to enjoy as an adult. It succeeds in the same way as Snow White and Cinderella before it. It's a fairy tale without any pretense. The animation is stellar, as is the music. Ursula the Devious Sea Witch is by far one of Disney's best villains. The climax is a little too brief for me, but it's still easy to see why people fell in love with this movie. It finally recaptured the classic Disney. Number 17, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Did you know that this was actually the first full-length animated movie ever made? For a first effort, it's pretty impressive. Of course, I liked it a lot as a child, but as an adult, I find it's only got better with age. It's a fairy tale, plain and simple, and it relishes it, and I think that's what makes so many of the Disney classics so timeless. When it's funny, it's really funny. When it's scary, it's actually still pretty terrifying. The only major problem is Snow White's voice, but even that I can get used to after a while. Number 16, Peter Pan. Disney and Peter Pan, two of the embodiments of childhood coming together. It sounds like a match made in heaven, and the result doesn't disappoint. This is a movie to watch if you want to feel like a little kid again. The characters seem just like real kids having adventures and fun at the same time. I especially love the Indian party scene. The music alone makes me want to join in the party. But of course what most people remember is Captain Hook, who's embodied wonderfully here. Honourable and cunning, but also side-splittingly funny. It's all definitely one of Disney's proudest trademarks. Number 15, The Rescuers Down Under. I briefly mentioned this in my list of sequels that are better than the original. It's a top-tier action-adventure that's far more exciting than the first Rescuers. I actually saw the sequel first, but I suspect I'd feel the same way if I hadn't. We have an astonishing opening shot, our adventurous young protagonist rescuing a giant eagle, nearly falling to his death off a cliff, followed by a spectacular flying scene that makes you feel every movement magnificently. And that's just in the first 10 minutes. As animated action films go, this is one of the best you could ask for. Number 14, Basil the Great Mouse Detective. aka just The Great Mouse Detective. This might not be high on anyone else's list, but it's easily one of my personal favourites. The idea of Disney doing a detective story, especially with mice, may sound absurd, but somehow it actually worked. I love watching the sharp, super smart hero cracking clues and figuring out various other things. But a hero can only be as good as his villain, and Rattigan truly is one of the greats. Basil is obviously a rodent version of Sherlock Holmes, and this is a great Sherlock Holmes substitute. It's surprisingly cool for such a silly concept, and definitely one of Disney's most entertaining flicks. Number 13, Frozen. Inspired in part by the Snow Queen fairy tale, this is another one that simply recaptured the Disney we all knew and loved. While of course it boasts toe-tapping songs, lovable characters, and breathtaking animation, what I especially love about it is how cleverly it satirizes some of the conventions associated with Disney, particularly the notion of true love. Its success is all the more remarkable because I clearly remember the trailers woefully misrepresented it, making it look painfully unfunny, so it also stands as a testament to why I always value reviews over trailers. Every time I see Frozen, it gets better and better. Number 12, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. From Walt's death up until The Little Mermaid is a time I like to call the Dark Age of Disney, and this was perhaps the only true gem to come out of that period. It's just amazing how well Disney captured the spirit of the original books. With the characters' childlike innocence and naivete, they got it spot on. And the film isn't limited to a 3-act structure, allowing you to wallow in all the wonder that the 100-acre wood has to offer. It's one of those remarkable movies that I actually love even more as an adult than I did as a child. Number 11, The Princess and the Frog. After a 5-year hiatus, Disney finally returned with another 2D animated feature, and the result was surprisingly inspired. This is perhaps the first Disney animated movie to acknowledge that you have to work in life, you can't just wish for your dreams to come true. The two ideals are in constant battle in this movie. And on top of that, it's just funny. It's bursting with laugh-out-loud humour. The story may be a little too complicated for some people, but it's fine with me because I like complex stories. This is another one that just keeps getting better each time I see it. Number 10, Bambi. Well, the first thing anyone thinks of is Bambi's mother, but it's kind of fitting that such a famous, emotionally crippling moment was in a movie that also succeeds in every other respect. The animation is simply outstanding. You really feel like you're in nature for the whole movie. And the way it tells its story is among Disney's most distinct. It's just the life of this deer and what he learns along the way. I especially like how Bambi has no personality to speak of, which makes him seem more like the animal he's supposed to be. It's by far one of Disney's finest. Number 9, Pinocchio. I've been told that I couldn't get enough of this movie as a kid, but I think that's just because I never actually owned it. To date, I've seen it maybe 3 times since growing up. The first time I saw it, I thought it was very good, and the second time I saw it, I thought it was amazing. The animation is absolutely top-notch, and is there any point in confirming the story's morals and emotional resonance? And of course, need we forget When You Wish Upon a Star, the song that's become perhaps Disney's biggest trademark? It's definitely one of Disney's definitive masterpieces. Number 8, Tangled. This was Disney's 50th animated feature, and they certainly picked a good one to mark the occasion. Rapunzel was perhaps the only classic fairy tale they didn't cover in their golden ages. The twists this version puts on the original story are fantastically clever, and it's amazing how well the movie balances humor, exciting adventure, and that timeless fairy tale sensibility that we all love from Disney. Its only slight problem is that the characters and dialogue do seem overly modern, though not annoyingly so. Overall, it's a very entertaining movie that I heartily recommend if you want to watch something that's fun but not brainless. Number 7, Zootropolis, aka Zootopia. There are several reasons why I adore this one to death. For one thing, the animal characters aren't just cheap substitutes for people, they fully embrace their characteristics, which paves the way for some outstanding social satire. The The filmmakers also take full advantage of what they can get away with. This is probably the closest you'll come to seeing a nudist colony and a drug lab in a Disney movie. The moral of always trying your best is presented exquisitely, and it's a legitimately good mystery story to boot. For all these reasons and more, I'm proud to say that this is a great movie. Number 6. The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Such a famously dark and demented Victor Hugo book might seem like a weird subject for Disney to take on, but for what they did with it, I can't help but love this one. With the exception of the gargoyles, it doesn't try to lighten the tone for kids. It tells a dark adult story just as it is, tackling issues like prejudice, heartbreak, and even lust. The music is awesome, including 2 of my absolute favorite Disney songs, Out There and Hellfire. It's definitely one of the most adult of all the Disney movies, and I love it all the more for that. Number 5. Fantasia. This is a very different kind of movie for Disney. Fantasia doesn't have a narrative story, it's just an experiment in applying animated images to classical music, thus creating visual poetry. And I'm one more of the many people who just love it for that. The animation is of course flawless, and I especially love how distinct each of the 7 sections are from each other, from Toccata and Fugue to The Sorcerer's Apprentice to Dance of the Hours to the ending with Night on Bald Mountain and Ave Maria. It all just goes to show the power of music over the mind. Number 4. Aladdin. This was actually the first movie I ever saw in the cinema, and it was one of the Disney movies I saw most often growing up. But is that the only reason it's one of my favorites? Of course not. The romance is one of Disney's best. Aladdin and Jasmine actually do have chemistry. Who can forget Robin Williams as the genie? The escape from the Cave of Wonders has to be one of the best action scenes ever animated. And its moral about lying is by far one of Disney's soundest. In short, I love every single second of this movie. Number 3. The Lion King. Yeah, when this movie came out, everyone I knew was crazy about it. The songs are brilliant, the animation is absolutely top-notch, especially in how it captures the spectacular African scenery. Both the animation and the story have a truly epic scale, and its moral is right up there with Aladdin as one of Disney's best. You can't change the past, but you can deal with it. People have said that it's basically a kid's version of Hamlet combined with King Lear. Well, so much the better. Either way, it's definitely the highest grossing 2D animated film of all time for a reason. Number 2. Beauty and the Beast. This movie is just incredible. Everything about it is just perfect. The main characters, the villain, the animation, the music, even the romance, which some people claim is just Stockholm Syndrome, but I respectfully disagree. I think the movie's single greatest strength is that it takes itself as seriously as a fairy tale can. All the characters seem like real people. Is it any wonder it was the first animated film ever to be nominated for Best Picture? If this list were based on a technical standpoint, this would have to be number 1. But my personal favourite is one that's a little less tangible. Here it is. Number 1, The Jungle Book. I can't really explain why this is my favourite of the bunch. It's just the one I have the most fun watching, and the world it sets up is the one I least want to leave. It happens to be the last one to be made while Walt Disney himself was still alive, but sadly he passed away before it was released, so he never got to see it. I haven't read the original book, though I've heard it's a lot better, but until I do, I'll gladly take this version. It's basically a road trip movie, a series of initially fun encounters, but then there's a brilliant tonal shift halfway through. All the characters are memorable and the music is upbeat and jazzy. But like I said, I can't really explain it otherwise. It doesn't really matter why The Jungle Book is so cool, it just is. Runners up. Cinderella does a fantastic job at adapting the story to feature length with expert build-up to the appearance of the fairy godmother. Dumbo isn't as sublime as Disney's other works, but still great fun. Meet the Robinsons isn't perfect, but I'm a sucker for a good time travel story. Moana, while nothing we haven't seen from Disney before, is still enjoyable for the stunning animation and the hilarious interplay between its two leads. Mulan is equal parts laugh-out-loud funny and an intensely vicious war scenario, including a pretty spectacular battle scene. 101 Dalmatians is a fun quest story packed with plenty of cool moments, including long-distance calls, military characters, and a getaway chase. Sleeping Beauty boasts a thoroughly enjoyable trio of fairies on one side and one of the best villains in Disney history on the other. And Wreck-It Ralph is a terrifically fun video game adventure with a full cast of endearing characters to support it. And those are my picks. Did your favourite make the list?